Bunking the Black Hebrew Israelites and their claim that the people of the Bible were black. Let's start out by talking about how the real Israelites looked identical to the ancient Egyptians, and the Black Hebrew Israelites will bring this up as evidence of the Israelites being black. However, the reason this is a flawed argument is because the Egyptians were not black. They were white. We could go all the way back to the very beginning of Egypt by looking at some pre-dynasty statues, and whether they made the body out of gold or ivory, they consistently used lapis lazuli to portray their eyes as being blue. Next, we move to Egypt's Old Kingdom, where we find a painting of Queen Merisink III, and she was a redhead. Furthermore, Merisik's uncle and husband, King Khafre, who is the face on the Great Sphinx. When we look at images of him that have not been desecrated, we could see that he doesn't have a flat sub-Saharan nose shape. He has a narrow Caucasian nose shape. And his son Menkaure has a nose that is just as pointy. After that, we come to the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, where we find a wooden statue of King Hor with blue eyes. But something more interesting than that is the Semna boundary stela, which was written by King Senusret III, where he speaks about how he has gone further south than any of his ancestors have ever gone. That one sentence right there completely destroys the atheist out of Africa theory, meaning that the Egyptians were originally from Mesopotamia, which is where Genesis 2:14 places the Garden of Eden. But the inscription goes on to say how the Nubians were not allowed to pass these new borders, and later pharaohs such as Thutmose III or Ramses II built temples celebrating their victories, defending these borders against the Nubians. Following that, we arrive at the New Kingdom, where we find Queen Hatshepsut, who is the woman that lifted Moses up out of the Nile, and her mummy confirms that she was a ginger. Poetry from the 20th dynasty describes their women as having a fair or bright complexion, just as Solomon's belly is compared to bright ivory. And artwork from this time period typically depicted the women as having either a white or yellowish skin tone. On the other hand, the men were typically depicted as being a ruby red color, with Pliny the Elder telling us how even the Sphinx used to be painted red. This color may have been caused by a sunburn, but it's also not too uncommon for white people to have a rosy, blushing appearance, like when Polybius wrote of how Hannibal's brother would get very red or ruddy, and if a man is ruddy, that means he's a fair color, which is why Seneca refers to the morning sunlight driving out the darkness of night as being ruddy. Preceding the New Kingdom, we do have to acknowledge that the Nubians did eventually conquer Egypt, and this was a fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy that God would give up Egypt as a ransom. On the contrary, no Israelites during this time were mistaken as Egyptians, and despite the Israelites being permitted to marry Egyptians in the days of Joseph, they were forbidden from marrying Egyptians in the days of Ezra, with Ezekiel calling the Israelites who did fornicators. Of course, they'll bring up how, after all of this, the Apostle Paul was still mistaken for an Egyptian. However, by that time, because of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Greeks had been living in Egypt for centuries, and even though Cleopatra was ethnically Greek, Virgil refers to her as Mark Antony's Egyptian wife. And it makes perfect sense that Paul was mistaken for a Greek, because the very next chapter, after he's called an Egyptian, he gets called a Roman.
So who is Israel exactly? A literal ethnic group? According to your theological perspective, you believe that Israel, that this group of people is a literal ethnic group, and you're a part of that ethnic group.
Correct.
Okay, so I have some friends in Los Angeles. They're Black Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah.
And they would say the exact same thing, but the total opposite of you. They would say, well, we're real Israelites, and you're an Edomite.
I'm aware of that.
And they would basically, they say the same things that you say, just from an opposite perspective, right? They say, well, Jesus came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and
I understand that.
things like that.
But what about the migrations and the millions of Israelites into Europe?
Do you think that the Israelites were white?
Well, yeah, of course they were.
You think the Israelites were white?
Adam, they're from Adam. Adam means white.
How do you know that they're white?
Can I look at their descendants today?
Yeah, but hold on. Everyone's a descendant of Adam and Eve.
Are they?
I believe so.
This woman knows who the true Israelites are.
I gotta say this. I had a lot of people come and say to me in my comments, people of color are the chosen people. They are the true descendants of Israel. They are the true Israelites. You'll never get an argument out of me. I can get with that. Why can I get with that? It's really kind of common sense if you think about it. Jesus Christ himself wasn't white, right? The origin of people, going all the way back to Adam and Eve, they weren't white people. We all know this. For anybody that's on here trying to deny that and thinks that Jesus or any of the people in that time were white, get a clue. Get a clue.
Get a clue. Comment truth if she's telling the truth. Do you know who the true Israel?
Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakodash, and double honors to the apostles, the bishops, the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered out on the four corners of the earth, prophesying in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. I just ran across this video and wanted to do a quick lesson on it through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Because these Edomites are terrified that the truth and that the true Israelites are waking up out of captivity. This is the big talk of the town right now, that they can't understand how the Holy Spirit has came and awakened the true Israelites back up. So they're doing everything in their power to offset the prophecies, keep us asleep, and stop this awakening. So this guy here, he's coming with that everybody, the Israelites was white, so-called white. My Bible call them red. And Jeremiah call them, the Israelites, is blackened to the ground. And I don't see the ground looking like no Edomite nowhere. Different shades of brown is the ground. So I just saw this video and just wanted to share it, that these Edomites are hurt, that the true Israelites are waking back up to their inheritance, coming back to their God, and not worshiping white Jesus anymore. And it's really painful to them to see that. So they're going to do any and everything in their might to say we are wrong. The things we're talking about are false. But I wasn't going to make this long. I just wanted to go into a few scriptures. in Exodus 4 and start with Exodus 4 and 4. And Yahweh said unto Moses, put forth thy hand and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hands and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. Now we're reading about back in the ancient days when Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, was dealing with Moses and showing him miracles and things of that nature, working miracles through Moses, showing the children of Israel his power. Verse 5, that they might believe that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, the Most High of their fathers, this is very plural, their fathers, not everybody father, not this guy that's in this video father. His father go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Continuing on, the power of Abraham, the power of Isaac, and the power of Jacob, this is very plural, have appeared unto thee. So Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is convincing the Israelites that he is the Almighty. So he wanted to work through Moses and show them a miracle of his power. Verse 6, and Yahweh said furthermore unto him, put now thy hand into thy bosom. So he told Moses to put his hand into his shirt. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hands was leprosy as snow. So, what color is snow? Snow is white. It don't have a color. So when Moses put his hand into his bosom, into his shirt, and he pulled it out, and his hand came out looking snowy, so he must have had a color before he put his hand into his shirt. I know we have been over these scriptures plenty of times, but this one passage in the Bible, in our Bible, shuts this man up completely, because Moses had a pigment in his skin that the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai took out and made it leprosy as the Edomites are, a clean leopard. Verse 7, and he said, put thy hand into thy bosom again. Now put your hand back into your shirt. Right now you looking pale. Probably see the blood showing through your skin as the Edomites are, because this is a curse that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai has put on the Edomites. We know today that our people has mixed and mingled with all the nations, and we can look just like an Edomite. But the biggest part of the Edomites don't have melanin. So he told him to put his hand back into his bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again and plucked it out of his bosom. So he put it in and he took it back out. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. So before he put it into his bosom and it came out white as snow, and then he put it back into his bosom and it came back to his other flesh. So some kind of way, his other flesh, I would like this guy to tell me what his other flesh looked like, since everybody was so-called white in the Bible. The true Israelites can go into the Bible and show you where the Edomites was born. But if you was to go ask this guy, show me how you got a so-called white man and a so-called white woman and made a so-called brown person or a so-called black person. I would like for him to go into the Bible and show me how did that happen, or just show me on earth where you see two so-called white people having a black baby. I seen on the internet not too long ago these so-called white couple having a black baby, but that wasn't that guy baby, even if that was a true photo. Two so-called white people cannot have a so-called black baby. It's not possible. But I didn't want to make this lesson long. I just wanted to go through that because this passage right here just shut him all up, because he cannot explain what Moses' other flesh was. So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Till the next time I say shalom.